Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Consumer Electronics Industry Panel for Google's VetNet Career Week. I'm Shauna Sopko. I'm a Senior Engineering Program Manager for Google, and including 4 years working on our Nest products. And I'm a proud U.S. Navy veteran. For the next hour, I'm honored to talk with our 4 wonderful panelists from the consumer electronics space. And the purpose of this panel, like the other industry panels that we're hosting, is for you to hear from representatives of different companies, talk about their experience working in this space, and understand what types of roles are available, and to hear recommendations on getting your foot in the door. So we hope that by listening to these stories, you'll have a better sense of what it means to be in the consumer electronics industry in hopes of better informing your career aspirations. So Jeff, Shreet, Jody, and Sanjay, thank you so much for joining us today and for giving back to the veteran and military spouse communities. I'd like to start, if we could, by going around the panel, having you introduce yourself, tell us who you work for and what role you have, what branch you were in if you were a veteran, or what branch you think is the coolest if you're a civilian ally, and what you love most about working at your current company or the consumer electronics industry in general. And with that, let's start with you, Jeff.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. Jeff Marshall. I work at Fitbit in our global operations group. Fitbit, now Google, excitingly. I served almost 11 years in the U.S. Air Force. And what I'm really excited about in the consumer electronics space is that it's always exciting and changing. There's nothing that sort of stays the same. You're always kind of learning and building on the last experience. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, thanks. And Shreet.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shreedhima Menon, go by Shri. I work in our global operations org in our devices and services product area. So it's basically the group in Google that makes our first-party hardware. I've been at Google for 6 years, and prior to that, most of my career was in manufacturing and supply chain. I've worked in a lot of different industries, oil and gas, consumer products, and now consumer electronics. I would say consumer electronics is the most fast-paced, exciting, ever-changing field. And it's really exciting to see the stuff that we're building. It's actually in the hand of consumers. So with that, super happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody.
Hey, so I'm Jody Chapman. I am a 7-year, 6 months, and 9-day U.S. Army veteran, but who's counting? But yeah, so I was born and raised in North Carolina. I'm married to a wonderful woman who's taking care of some great kids in the back right now. 2 little girls. I am an operations manager at Amazon currently. And in a prior role, I'm also working for a pretty large tech company in the US in Converge One. So I've seen industry from two different kind of aspects, if you will. But with all that being said, I think probably the most interesting part about the company I work for right now is that we love the word peculiar at Amazon. And at first I thought it was really, really weird to just want to be known by peculiar. But as we continue to learn more about our company, what we're trying to do in different areas, consumer electronics and even beyond, it takes a very, very, very peculiar person to kind of, latch to and kind of hold on to the culture. So it's a great time. I enjoyed a whole lot, and I can't wait to answer some more questions from you.
Thanks, Jody. Welcome. Sanjay.
Hi, thanks for having us. Thank you all for your great service to all of us and our country. I'm Sanjay Narona. I'm a product manager here at Google Nest. I focus on our Wi-Fi solutions. And this means all these video calls that we're doing and all the learning from home, try to make that a little easier. What excites me about the space that we're in is our mission is extremely simple. It's like, let's try to help people to have more productive lives and just make things a little bit easier with technology. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Well, great. And thank you again all for joining us. I'm really excited to learn from your experience here in this panel. All right. Well, for our first question, and Shreet, I'll start with you on this one, and Jody, come to you next. Can you please let us know a little bit more? Explain your start in this industry. What was your first break, if you will, and how did you really get your foot in the door?
Sure, absolutely. So And I'll start a little bit, probably like rewind a little bit. I graduated from my master's program in 2008, and before that I was in India. That's where I was born and brought up. And then I graduated in 2008, which for many of us, if you remember, it was the global economic crisis. So at that point, I was on a student visa. So even getting a job was something like, somebody just give me any job. I don't even care what company it's in. And my first job ended up being in a really small, tiny 100 people company in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Never had I thought that from India I would land up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then that was probably like the biggest learning experience for me in terms of being a manufacturing engineer in an oil and gas company in a production floor, working with a lot of the folks on the production side, understanding how actually things get made. How do you influence people when you behave completely different from them? So it was a really big cultural experience for me. And after that, it was time to kind of move on and do something different. And then I ended up being, moved over to Chicago as a management consultant. That's a very different industry, very fast paced. Over there, we were working with a lot of external clients and kind of giving them a lot of advice on how to improve their manufacturing and operations. And after that, I ended up at Google. So my journey to Google was, it was pretty long. Like coming to Google did take time. I think the main thing I remember is at any job, whatever job I had, it didn't really matter, but I always made sure that I picked up a few things that would be transportable for the next role. So my first job taught me how to actually understand how manufacturing works, what exactly happens in a production floor. My second job gave me the breadth of supply chain. How do you think about it, not just from an execution perspective, but also strategic perspective? And in Google, it's kind of moving even farther and saying, how do you now become a program manager where you have to work with a lot of different stakeholders in a completely different industry that I was used to? So that's been sort of my journey.
Great. Yeah, no, I like that. Picking things up from each role and transfer them to the next, and you build on that skill set. All right, Jody, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Shauna. How you doing? But yeah, so my break into the industry, I'll go back as well. A couple of years. So I got out of the military in 2016. When I did that, from being a combat engineer, I had so many translatable skills when it came to consumer electronics and Amazon as a whole, which I didn't, obviously. So in all seriousness, when I first got out of the military, I wasn't too sure which way to go. I knew that I truly liked solving problems for people and making things more efficient and easier for them. And so that kind of helped me get a head start. So I just started looking at being open-minded. So I went to a program called Tech Call, which actually allowed me to get into the tech industry as a whole as an outside sales rep for a company called Venture Technologies. And when that happened, I took a 3-year education in everything technological. And so, from selling consumer electronics of various, brandings to also being a manufacturer of our own consumer electronics at our company. And then, of course, that being something we were really trying to educate ourselves on and push to our customers. It took not a long time, but a decent amount of time to get around the fact that I wasn't necessarily selling a product. I was selling a vision or a story, right? And that kind of helped me when it came to understanding consumer electronics a whole lot better. I wasn't pushing a product 100%. I was trying to push, that vision that helped that assistance. And so just continuing to search, be open-minded, and of course, be humble in everything definitely led me to where I am now at Amazon. And so when I made the jump over to Amazon, I was trying to find something, if you will, that continued to allow me to be consumer-minded first and primarily, because without the consumers, we are useless, quite simply. So just continuing to stay humble, to stay open-minded, and continue to search. Since I've been here at Amazon, has allowed me to see a lot of different things. We have a lot of different roles that don't align directly into the same ones as other companies. But when it comes to operations management, program management, they kind of align the same, if you will. And so I enjoy the role I have now. Right now, I've taken a big lead on the operations side right now, which has been pretty interesting for me from my background. And it helps me drive a lot of things into the consumer's hands now. But with all that being said, the only advice I can give you as far as getting your foot in the door right now is again, be humble, be searching for things, and be open-minded, because things will come to you without expecting it sometimes. And if you were just not really looking for it or not open-minded to receive it, you might miss it. And so I'm thankful for the opportunities that I've received to this point. And that's about all I have for this question.
Jody, would you mind elaborating a little bit that how did you learn about the opportunity that you currently have at Amazon? Was it through a job board, a career conference? Like, can you say a little more about that?
Yeah, sure can. And so again, the beef searching part, I have a good friend of mine who took the same path as me, kind of out the military into the tech space and then into Amazon specifically. And so of course I was like, hey, why'd you make this jump from where we were essentially solution selling our own kind of devices to consumers and large businesses, both to Amazon. And he was like, you know what? I'll let you find out for yourself, but here's the contact information for somebody for our military kind of recruitment branch. And so we have a military recruitment arm that I'll go into a little bit later on in the program, but tying with the military recruitment arm that we have, they can give you a lot of information into different roles and opportunities within the company organization as a whole. There's a lot of names that I didn't quite understand specifically for Amazon, being peculiar as it may be. And so it definitely helps having kind of, that guide, if you will, to kind of help drive along the way.
Yeah, no, totally fair. So you had connected with somebody at Amazon who really was assigned to or understood the veteran community and to help you work through what those roles were and help find a good fit.
Spot on.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for that. Jeff, this next question kind of directed to you. So I'm wondering if you can tell us how firmly charted your path was. Did you concretely map out your career path sort of step by step, or just take it one opportunity at a time? Like, did you know I want to be in this type of a job one day, so therefore here's all the steps that I should take to get there? Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, sure. I guess for me, it's kind of a combination of things. What Jody was talking about around being open and sort of getting in there and sort of seeing what, the lay of the land is really resonated because, I had a similar experience. I think, to start with, figuring out what area or, career field you're interested in. I got an opportunity to join a finance banking company right out of grad school. And, I didn't know if that's what I wanted to do, but I jumped on the opportunity and I'm glad I did because it exposed me to a lot of different kinds of businesses. I was working in technology. I got exposed to, e-commerce businesses, semiconductor businesses. And so that kind of broadened my view and helped me determine what big area I really wanted to go into. And I sort of landed on operations generally within, technology companies. And so I think for people transitioning from the military, it's really important that you kind of do your research, certainly, but be open to just jumping in. And, that'll in and of itself give you a good view of, what's out there, what career fields are like. So once I kind of figured operations is where I wanted to be, and technology, within technology and consumer electronics companies, operations means kind of different things. So like at a technology company, like say Facebook, operations might be helping companies come advertise on the Facebook platform and the process steps that you do to make that happen. For Fitbit, operations is fulfilling orders, as an example. So someone comes and orders, and then we go and we do the logistics that delivers that order to their door. And so I was really attracted to operations, and that's kind of my military mindset of like seeing a process, executing the process, making it better. And I think for a lot of military folks that resonates. Once I kind of determined my area, then it was about network. And I think, it's super important to have those coffees and build those networks. The world is small, not just within your military community, but within, work life and communities like that. I was as an example, I was at a small startup working in operations, and I got a call from a buddy of mine from grad school who's former Marine. He said, "Hey, Jeff, I'm building out a big operations team. Do you want to come over and work for us?" And I said, "Sure, that sounds great." And he said, "Well, what do you know about legal operations?" And I said, "I don't know anything about legal operations." And he was like, "Don't worry, come on over. You know how to set up processes, you know how to set up, determine a plan and then deliver on that." And so, I think you being open to taking those, to leveraging your network is really, has been important to me in my career path, less than sort of mapping things out. So just to circle back, for me, it was sort of a combination of generally figuring out what area I want to be in, and then leveraging my network to kind of guide the path of different roles that I take.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'm hearing that part of that, generally figure out your area first, it actually helped you to go into a job that gave you exposure to lots of different areas at first. Because you weren't really, that was part of your education, was to land in a job that let you see a lot of that to help you pick the next
area. For sure. And I think Jody, had a similar experience, right? Like getting exposed to different business types and different kinds of career areas was really important for me in my path.
Same here. Same here.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Okay, Sanjay, I wonder if you could tell us, what would you say your biggest recommendation to veterans and military spouses with maybe limited to no experience, but who are interested in beginning a career specifically in this space?
That's really interesting and makes me kind of think back to when I got into technology, which was a long time ago, perhaps even as a teenager. I think the number one thing I would say is curiosity, right? It's the desire to help solve some specific problem that maybe you've noticed yourself, which means you're curious, or you've noticed that there's a problem that somebody else is having that makes you curious and wonder, oh man, I wonder, is there a solution for this already? Is there something that I can think I could do or get done to help solve this problem? It's kind of funny looking at myself in the camera. I see I'm wearing this T-shirt, which was completely by accident. And it says "The Inventor" is a little bit of a joke in the company. And they made this T-shirt because what drives invention, right? It's curiosity. It's like, hey, I need to solve a problem, and I don't really see a good answer or a good solution for this. So we're going to invent. So I think for technology, there's just so much that you can do from coming up with a product idea, and this can come literally from anywhere. It can come from somebody in operations and logistics. It can come from someone in customer support. It can come from engineering, but really it can come from anywhere. And I think there's this openness in the environment. I think Jody talked about this, Jeff, as well. Like there's this idea of openness in the tech community to new ideas and new thinking. So be curious, have a desire to help people. Coming back to be open-minded, so have this humility, as Jody mentioned, to soak in information and use that with the desire to help people. And really, that's all it takes. Because from there, I would say you might be thinking, okay, hey, but I don't have a background in engineering, so how can I join the tech community? Well, guess what? Certainly at Google, and I know in many other companies, there's this belief that technology gets obsolete so quickly, within 5 years, 7 years, that in fact the domain knowledge that you have may not be as relevant five years from now. So then what's really important? Curiosity, adaptability. Like these are far more fundamental traits in the tech industry than I have a degree or some training in engineering. Because let's face it, if you're curious and adaptable and you get a foot in the door and you're working on any facet of technology, just with this desire to help people, you will learn, you will evolve, you will contribute. And so I would say, please come and help us in this industry. We need all the help we can get.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love those sort of principles: the curiosity, open-mindedness, humility, and that will open you up to those opportunities to just learn. And kind of, with that said, are there like specific types of roles that maybe, Sanjay, you think, folks in this position should consider first as sort of opening shot roles that let them, experience the curiosity and the open-mindedness you described?
Yeah. So I mean, I think certainly with curiosity, with the desire to want to solve problems for people, I mean, literally, there's pretty much any role you can apply to if you have the right attitude towards it. So I would say roles in customer support, roles which help folks be more efficient. I mean, Jeff mentioned being good at setting up processes, right? So I tell this story to my teenage son, and I'm like, hey, you know what? There's amazing opportunity in literally anything that you do, right? And we were at In-N-Out the other day, and I said, look at these kids. Now, if one kid does something which can shave 15 seconds of making one burger well, so we still want to make it well, okay? We don't want to cut quality. But if the one kid can shave 15 seconds of doing that, I said, just imagine the productivity, right? So I think that coming into literally any role, whether it's customer support, whether it's logistics, whether it's operations, whether it's even marketing and things like that, which seem like they're more specialized, but coming back to this idea of you have the right attitude and you have the right drive and persistence, I believe you could literally come into almost anything. So certainly look at roles that speak to you as interesting, and speak to people you know. I want to come back to what Jeff said. Like, you'd be surprised at how many people you know in your life, maybe not directly, but someone who knows someone who might be able to give you advice and a foot in the door. And really, that's all you need. And when that person sees your attitude and your drive, that's the door open right there.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm hearing a sort of a confidence and faith in members of this community being able to really make the best of any role and apply their skills that they do have to really any role. But that, some ideas, just to give a couple of guiding ideas to folks, I heard quite a few roles in sort of the operation space, potentially, whether they were, as you mentioned, they sort of good things for setting up process and just getting work done. Honestly, I heard quite a few in the operation space there that you mentioned as well. And then trying to connect with someone that helps you learn more about what the roles mean, back to kind of the conversation with Jody on the recruiting side, for example. Well, thanks for that. Jody, I'm just curious if you had anything to add on that in terms of ideas around those sort of initial roles to allow that learning to happen.
Yeah, for sure. I would say I agree with Sanjay 100%. Defining it to a specific role sometimes can be kind of hard. But to get specific for a second, I will say any kind of entry into I would say small level operations. So if you're not 100% sure if this is where you want to go, or you're not 100% confident in the whole space, like Jeff said, a lot of veterans are operationally minded, which plays a huge benefit, right? But at the same time, there is an education into this space that's also there, which I think a lot of us gain from our multiple experiences along the way. That allows you to be more holistically a better operator, a better manager for consumer electronics and for our companies. And so I'd say, for instance, at Amazon, there are some roles, area manager, which is essentially right under operations manager, that allows you to get an understanding of the company, understanding of the role, and understanding just of how to corporately roll out operations, to corporately look at things from that perspective, because that's a little different than military mindset sometimes. I would say that my AGM told me when he first interviewed me that he was happy that I had been softened up from the military. And I guess what he meant by that was in the military, some things can be just as fast paced as they are in our industry right now. But the culture is a little different, right? So what you're training for, what you're doing is a little different than it is here. And so here it took a little bit of softening around the edges to be to be able to lead as dynamic as you need to in the situations that we can be in here. So a little bit more refinement. And so, for instance, starting out at a smaller kind of level of operations, and anything that does allow you to solve problems, of course, that is key to this. But just getting your head away from kind of the mission, as much as it is now the customer, the consumer, I think is a good start.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And I even heard a little of kind of what Jeff had mentioned earlier about those early roles to take, ones that give you visibility into lots of different areas. That it almost sounds like, Jody, you're applying that within wherever you go first. Try to take a role that actually lets you see and get that view into different roles within even just your own company.
Yeah, because it's about cultural fit, right? And so, and then in this industry, there's so many companies that do so many things so differently. And so understanding the cultural fit by networking, by being around different opportunities will definitely allow you to land where you can grow and thrive, because the best place for you to grow and thrive will also be the best place for your company get something from you. So
great. No, thanks for that. Jeff, coming to you next. Wondering if you can discuss a little bit about, does functional experience matter? Do you see many folks with a non-technical background, able to make the transition into companies into your companies for similar roles?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, I'll just sort of give my perspective as kind of a hiring manager, interviewing people. Functional experience to me, it matters, but it differs based on if it's a sort of entry level role versus a more senior role that would require more functional experience. So when I'm interviewing for, say, a more entry role into the career field, I very much focus on other things than functional experience. For me, it's like the person's. I'm looking for characteristics around can a person plan something and then deliver on it. I'm looking for their ability to kind of apply an analytical mindset to things. Like, do they take a problem and put numbers against it to get a better view of what to do? I'm looking for people that are problem solvers, people that are good team members. And so when I interview for roles, especially early roles for people early in their career, if you can come into an interview and give me concrete examples of those 4 or 5 things that I just mentioned, that's what I'm looking for. Now, more senior roles, there will require, I think, some functional experience. You just need to be able to sort of bring some experience into the role. That's what the company's hiring you for. That said, passion goes a long, long way, right? And I think demonstrated passion about a role can it switch the mindset on whether the person has the necessary functional experience. So just a quick example, right? I had never been in finance. I didn't have the functional experience. It was sort of a mid-level role. I knew that the role would require financial modeling. I'd never done that. So I went and took a course on building spreadsheets and how to build models on my time, right? And so as I'm in the interview, he said, "What's your banking experience?" And I said, "None, but I've taken this course on my own time. And I think it'll go a long way to fulfilling the functional requirements that you need." And so, oh, by the way, I have all these other real world experiences from the military and otherwise. And, I crossed the gap that said, hey, this guy really wants this role. He doesn't have the functional experience, but he spent time on his own building some skills that, would fill that gap. So, I just, from my perspective as a hiring manager, sort of different functional experience matters different in different places. And passion really can help you get there if you don't have the right experience.
Got it. Yeah. So like a little from the hiring manager perspective, you're saying, look, functional experience maybe a little less critical of a job requirement as opposed to a nice to have for those entry level roles, and the characteristics like passion, can you create a plan and deliver on it, et cetera. Those things can be applied in the technical environment just fine. And they're highly valued skills and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks for that. Shreet, I'm wondering, same kind of question for you. Can you talk about your experience with functional experience in this more technical world?
Sure, absolutely. And kind of echoing what Jeff said in one of the previous questions, it helps to have a general understanding of what area you want to fit in. So I'll just give a little bit of a personal story. So for me, that was operations, manufacturing, and supply chain. So I was like, that's the area I'm interested in. I like factories. I like looking at how things are built. But then how things are built is very different for you're building a cereal box or a huge machinery in the oil and gas field, or you're building a phone. So these are very, very different. So when I was actually applying for the operations program manager job in the role that I'm in right now, the one in the devices group, I didn't know anything about how a phone is built or how we build laptops or anything like that. And I was surrounded by people in the interview who are coming from Apple and who've got years and years of experience. So I think I did a little bit of what Jeff did. I sold them based on passion. So it was an entry-level role in the sense I could say, like, I will pick it up. I know manufacturing. I know how factories work. I know what it takes to get something built in a factory. You need people, you need materials, you need machines. So you kind of give like a general understanding of expertise. And I was like, I will learn how you build a phone. So I remember the first project I was on, it was one of our early Pixel phones. I shadowed a more senior operations program manager. I went to the factory in Asia, and I was just crazy curious. I was asking questions to everybody, whether it's our electrical engineers, our mechanical engineers, our audio engineers, our manufacturing engineers, like, how do you do this? What's happening? Why are we doing it this way? So just having a general hunger for learning was super helpful. So in the next year, I was able to kind of like independently do the role on another phone all by myself, just having shadowed somebody through and through. So to sort of echo what Jeff said, having a general understanding of the area you want to be in is helpful. Number two is having that personal grit and curiosity and hunger to learn is important, which sort of makes you sort of become more of an expert eventually.
Yeah, no, got it. And I also heard a little bit of go into those early conversations that you have a network in with hiring managers you may be talking to, et cetera, with a confidence in what you do bring to the table, right? Like there's a lot of your experience that may not be like this functional, experience that you do absolutely have, and have confidence that you can take that and apply it and learn to gain whatever it is that you may have a gap in terms of your experience and knowledge. So
absolutely.
Thank you for that. Awesome. All right. Kind of moving into another direction here. Sanjay, there's a common phrase that I've heard, the background working on the Nest products as well. A common phrase I've heard, hardware is hard. Can you shed some light on this, provide any insights into unique elements of the consumer electronics industry that you just think might be valuable information for folks considering working in the industry?
Oh, that's cute, right? Hardware is hard. So is software soft? I don't know. I mean, it's kind of funny, but I think anything can be hard. Anything, literally anything, right? I mean, if I guess with all this work from home business, some of us have become bakers over the last year, right? I mean, there's so much complexity and learning and difficulty in anything, like even baking, I would say. So coming back to what I think everyone's been talking about, do you find yourself wanting to help people? I think that's a very clear answer for the members of this community, right? There would be no other reason to do what you guys do for all of us if you didn't have this innate desire to help. So let's start with that. And then we say, Are you curious? Do you think about ways in which things can be done better? So with that mindset and attitude, I would say nothing is really hard, right? I mean, you just apply yourself. You're curious. You actually said you ask a lot of questions, and you uh, respectfully and I would say purposely or purposefully apply yourself to the problem. And so yeah, hardware is hard, but anything is hard if you want to do it really well. And that's the point I was mentioning earlier, even about making a great burger in and out, right? You want to do it really well. So yeah, I would say that that all that being said, coming back to some of Jody's points, every industry does have a specific lingo language that you will learn over time, and you will need to know some of these things. There's a lingo that it's true of the military, it's true of any industry, or any type of job or role that you take on. So the curiosity will drive you to learn about the role that you're trying to get into. Let's say it's operations, let's say it's customer support. Okay, if the customer support role happens to be for a video streaming product, like let's go into technology. This is about technology, right? What is it about video streaming products that's interesting? Where do you think the problems might be? What do you think customers will call in for? How might you think about helping them? How do you think about solving their problem? And I think as long as you do that and you start with that mindset, we have tremendous resources, right? A shameless plug for YouTube, right? Because we work at Google. It's so much information available out there in terms of research, in terms of just diving deeper and deeper and deeper, and preparing yourself so that when you go to an interview or you go apply for a job, in addition to what is clearly a very curious, I like what Jody said, sorry, peculiar, engaged, passionate person, you also have demonstrated that you've taken some time to learn a little bit about that particular role, and that'll just hold you in good stead. So yeah, hardware is hard, but anything that's worth doing well is hard, and I have no doubt with the right attitude that anything's possible.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely hear that. Yeah, maybe it just happens to be cute that hardware can have this cute phrase, right? Hardware is hard, but really everywhere's got hard, complex problems.
Of course.
And it's just your tackling of them is what determines the outcome. Okay, well, let's see. We'll shift gears again. Jody, I'm wondering if you can kind of tell me a little bit about the types of offerings, programs, and services that your company offers the military community. And maybe I know you spoke about it earlier, but maybe there's specific recruiters who deal with veterans, et cetera. Kind of discuss that a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, sure. So there's a slew of them. So first I will say, Google it in your free time for specifics. But I have a couple of them right here that are great ones to use. So first and foremost, is the simplest one to go to. It's just Amazon Jobs. If you're interested in working here, you'll see for any entry-level management position and hire, they actually have on the website jobs that are marked specifically, if you will, where they're searching for military. They're searching for military talent. They're searching for talent from the military because of the understanding of processes, the ability to develop and execute plans, and then refine them moving forward. So just Amazon.jobs is a great resource to use first and foremost, especially to get an understanding of what the offerings may be, even outside of consumer electronics. This goes to AWS and everywhere else that we offer at Amazon. Next, there of course is they have fellowship programs, as well as skill bridge programs. So a couple companies have this offering where essentially for your last 180 days of the military service, you can go ahead and essentially start working in a kind of an apprenticeship or entry-level position in that civilian company to get an understanding of what it is to work at that organization. And then upon exiting the military, you can go ahead and start working there. So we have the same kind of thing at Amazon. When it comes to military skill bridge programs, we're partnered with the military on that forefront. We have Amazon Delivery Service Partners programs. And so what that essentially means is Amazon has kind of bundled together all the necessary material for a person, veterans specifically, to come from no background whatsoever in logistics to being a owner or manager of a delivery service station. And so they have essentially a package that can help you with the legal portion of it, standing up the actual company, education and what have you, and then just kind of the ins and outs of how to design and run, hire the best, maintain that culture as a delivery service partner, and run your own delivery service station, which is highly beneficial for a lot of people. There's no logistics background necessary, no trucking or driving background necessary whatsoever. It's all kind of put together, sample size for you. And then last but not least, there is, of course, Amazon's lovely third-party services that we kind of call our own. And so we have RME, which is reliability, maintenance, engineering. But there's some other companies that we work with for maintenance purposes. And for those who are maintenance minded, we have the same kind of program, if you will, for the military personnel, where they can literally just get in contact, going through the Amazon website and look for those third-party opportunities that are kind of earmarked for veterans, because it's this easy transition, if you will, for those who are technically minded on the mechanical side, and to get you into that space. And I will end this with what I started with from my personal experiences. And that was they do have a military kind of recruitment team. And so it's not like a sneaky way around, but what they do very well, which Jeff alluded to, and then even Sanjay and Shreet said they did very well for their interviews, is they help you understand how to articulate the value you bring from your military experience to a company such as Amazon. So there is so much that a military person brings to a civilian company that they just don't know off the top of their head. They really don't. And so the military recruitment arm just specializes in just that. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I think there's another question around there that kind of bleeds into this, but they can help knock down some of your internal barriers that you might have, and kind of help you position yourself specifically for those general managers, those AGMs who are looking for military-minded individuals, and then help make that connection to where the only thing you're doing now is just, hey, here I am, here are my experiences, and here's why I believe this is a good cultural fit for me.
Oh, that was great. I love all the specific examples that you provided for our audience here, and just kind of echoes. We live in this wonderful time where a lot of amazing companies see the value in the veteran military spouse community, and so have customized places on their career sites, like you mentioned, the Amazon job site. I know the Google career site as well has special sections just to describe what a process might look like for someone in the community to begin a job search with the company. Other things I picked out of there is the skill bridge opportunities with the companies, and finding companies where they're filtering the jobs that have been specifically earmarked as potentially good fits for folks coming from this community. And then the recruiting team asking around to get connected with someone on a recruiting team who specifically has a lot of knowledge base to connect directly with the sort of veteran and military community. So thanks for all those specifics. Okay, I'm wondering, Jeff, maybe you can kind of elaborate a little bit more on these types of profiles that you normally see succeeding in the consumer electronics industry. You know, I know you've spoken about it a little bit already in your previous answers, but maybe kind of help break it down for us and summarize the traits and behaviors that you see that are valuable and those profiles.
Yeah, no problem. I think the good news for consumer electronics is that whatever you want to do, you can probably do it. So if you're interested in designing a product, you can do it in consumer electronics. If you want to take that product and sell more of it and be a sales role, you can do it. If you're interested in the numbers, maybe finance or accounting is a role for you. How do you take that product from an idea and then launch it sell it in 6,000 retail locations, right? Operationally. So I think from, a military or military spouse perspective, like consumer electronics is a space that needs all of those things. And so it's possible to be successful across a bunch of different types of profiles. So that's the really great news about consumer electronics. In terms of like traits that I see successful, some of them have already been mentioned, but I'll just highlight again. Consumer electronics, I think curiosity, as Sanjay said, and a willingness to continue to learn. The space is so fast paced, right? One product cycle leads very quickly to another product cycle as technology advances. And, think about phones 5 years ago versus today, right? Like you have to continually be learning, curious, wanting to solve the next problem. So I think that's something that successful folks have. I would say a second trait is this idea of saying something and then doing it, right? The ability to say, here's what I'm going to deliver, and then going and delivering it. And consumer electronics, you have to turn an idea into something real that you can then sell. And so having that ability to really see something, say what you're going to do, and then do it is really important. And then the last thing, I think Sanjay mentioned it as well, but I would just call it as customer focus. People who succeed in consumer electronics know what consumers want. It's called consumer, right? Like you have to be focused on the customer. And I think if you always if you are a person that brings that to, your job, this idea of how am I going to improve this person's life? What is it they really want? Always going back to the root of it's about the customer. People who have that sort of embedded in what they do day in and day out, I think are going to be successful in consumer electronics as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that sort of reflection that this particular industry has a lot of different role types in it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day has to produce a thing that like a physical object that people engage with. And so a lot of those sort of profile skills traits that you mentioned make sense in this industry.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that. Shri, I'm wondering if you can also kind of give your perspective on the same thing about profiles you've seen be successful.
Sure. Sort of adding on to what Jeff said, I'd say one of them is being comfortable with ambiguity, because it's a space that is constantly changing. What is true today may not hold true a month from now if we get a different signal from the market, if we have a different top-down direction. So sort of being comfortable with the fact that I have a plan today and it works really well today, but I might have a different plan a month from now and I will still make it work. I think being able to be comfortable with that space is important. The second one is being comfortable with working with a lot of people. In consumer electronics, some of these teams are very big and very diverse. They're across the global landscape. We have teams in Asia, we have teams in Europe, and many different parts of the world. So not only are they geographically dispersed, but they also have different motivations, they have different goals, which are sometimes at conflicts with each other. Like what a product team wants to do may not align with what a sales team wants to do, and may not align with what a finance team wants to do. So having that capability to bring people together and align on a common business goal and moving forward, because many times, whether you're in a design role or engineering role or operations role, you might find yourself in the middle of a very chaotic situation where everybody has very different goals. And how do you be that one person who brings everybody together, is objectively driving a decision forward, is super important. So I'd say those are two that I've found to be super important in roles in consumer electronics.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. The constant sort of changing environment and having to, Jeff's point, make a plan and execute on it. But Shri, your point is, yes, make a plan, but know that you may need to change the plan and still be dedicated to the execution of it, and potentially and probably going to have lots of further changes until you actually deliver the product at the end of the day. And then, yeah, this idea of to produce a product in this industry, it requires people from all over the place, all over the globe, all over the map of different perspectives, and this kind of need to align people and collaborate with lots of different teams is critical to success. So thanks for those insights. Sort of similarly, Sanjay, I'm wondering kind of how you see a member of the military community in particular, thriving in this space as we sort of talk about maybe profiles that are successful. Can you talk about maybe how you've seen military folks thrive?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we have a few of us, a few of you, I'd say, on this call today, just indicating that the success that folks with the background in the military can have in the technology space, and the reasons for this. And I've worked with folks, whether they were in university or on various jobs that I've had, folks who spent time in the Army, folks who spent time in law enforcement, folks who spent time in the Navy, who I know personally are really good friends of mine. Shri mentioned grit. I think various folks have talked about adaptability, community, purpose. I mean, the list is literally endless of these amazing traits that folks in the military bring to the world, to the community, and you'll find a need for those traits in a fast-paced, changing environment like technology. The ability to think on your feet, something that you didn't expect came up. There's this saying like "been there, done that," right? I mean, and there's value in that when you've been there, done that, and you're faced with the most horrible, daunting problem in the moment. The ability to take a step back and say, "Hey, why are we here? What are we trying to do?" Right? We know we can't accomplish it alone. We have to do this as a team. And Jeff mentioned teamwork as well. So, I mean, thriving, I don't see this as any kind of issue whatsoever. In fact, I would say, rocket ship accelerant, right? Because the foundation is so very strong from all those years of thinking on your feet, collaborating, being adaptable, expecting the unexpected, and the desire above all to be quote unquote customer focused. Like, who's the customer of folks in the military? It's the country and the people that you serve. And so no matter what the adversity in the moment, it's like, hey, I know why I'm here, no matter how bad this moment might seem. And then there's the good moments to celebrate as well, right? When, hey, we've been successful in the initiatives that we're trying to get forward. So I would say, please bring that to us in the technology space. There is a lot of need for these translatables and very strong skills. And so I encourage folks to, hop on Amazon's website, right? Hop on Google's website. Take a look at jobs that are interesting to you. Obviously, if you do not have a background in technology, perhaps walking into some kind of more senior role may be a little challenging. But certainly look at jobs that give you the opportunity to start, and you'll find a welcoming community and one that helps you grow as you spend more time in technology.
Great. Yeah, no, and kind of tying this back to the getting the foot in the door. When having those conversations with whether it's the recruiting team or hiring managers or just connections that you make, you can showcase these skills that you all have been bringing up: the grit, the adaptability, collaboration, thinking on your feet. Those skills can be showcased via stories of what you've experienced in the military community, and kind of finding stories that show those skills is a great way to help with that getting a foot in the door and show how valuable.
If I might add one thing, I think you mentioned stories. I think this is good because when you're interviewing, I think people fear the interview. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't know this space. Bring your stories, bring your stories and just real quick, tell me about a situation when blah, 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 think about the situation, describe it briefly, think about what you did to help that situation and explain the outcome. So situation, behavior, outcome, yep. Boom, you're done. That's your interview right there.
You're in. Okay, great. So if we could just in kind of briefly in the last few minutes that we have here, and I'm specifically looking at Jody and Jeff on this one. It's common for military veterans and spouses to feel this sense of imposter syndrome, when you're in your first non-military role. It's a whole new world, right? Did you have experience with this, and how did you overcome it? Just briefly, Jody, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I will say, yes, I had it, which is, I don't like to admit, but I realized something pretty quickly, and that was, I went to West Point from a very humble beginnings. I deployed with soldiers who deployed many times before I deployed before. So I've been in those situations before, and I had to remember one basic thing. That was my why I was there, why I was doing it. It's just your why. Going back to your why will always give you what you need to push forward if your why is strong enough to not be shaken by your circumstances. And so that's helped me get past my imposter syndrome, that I wasn't in the right place, was just knowing why I was there.
I love that. I'm going to steal that, Jeff.
Yeah. So yes, for sure. I felt imposter syndrome. I think for me, the first 2 years transitioning out of the military are part of the hardest for me. I missed my teammates. I missed the mission, the camaraderie. I was older as I transitioned. So, at grad school, all my classmates came from business. They were younger. They had all this sort of foundational experience that I didn't around, economics, accounting, finance, strategy, marketing. And I definitely felt out of place. So, I guess the good thing is military spouses, military members bring adaptability and are just by nature quick learners. And so, I sort of stuck it out, and, that second year of school where I had already kind of done the learning curve and learned kind of the foundation, I far surpassed my classmates because I brought all these real world experiences that they didn't have. And so I guess what I would say is it's natural if you feel that as a transitioning member. Don't sort of be scared. You'll get through it. And you bring experiences that after you learn the foundation are going to help you far surpass kind of your peers. So
awesome. Yeah, no, what a great way to end this panel. And we're unfortunately out of time for today. But thank you to everyone here for joining. I know I found your stories to be fascinating and insightful. I'm sure the audience did as well. And we appreciate all of you giving back to those in this military community interested in consumer electronics. To all those watching, there's more industry panels following this one, starting at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. If you're curious about working in the auto industry, you can log on to the live stream and you'll hear from representatives from Ford, Uber, Waymo, Stellantis, Tesla. And if you're more interested in hearing about management consulting or finance and banking, you can go back to the VetNet Career Week website and view the panels straight from that site. All the panels will be recorded, so you can review them later on YouTube or right on our veterans website at g.co/vets. So thanks again, everyone, for watching, and have a great day.
Thank you.